psychologist and neurofeedback practitioner that with Bhakti Wellness Center.
I'm Guy Odishaw. I'm a craniosacral therapist and neurofeedback practitioner at Bhakti Wellness Center and the Bhakti Brain Health Clinic.
Well, welcome and thank you both for being here with us this evening.
We're delighted to be with you.
Be here.
Now, I know that you use our devices at your clinic. We thought we'd ask you how you use them and if you wanted to share any stories with us.
Sure.
Fran, go ahead.
Sure. Okay, great. Yeah, so I use the AVE units with both my neurofeedback clients, but also with people that clients that I'm just strictly doing psychotherapy with, and use it for a variety of reasons, you know, anywhere from people who are having like issues with anxiety, lots of people that are having difficulties with sleep quality, insomnia, all kinds of events, you know, around sleep. And then also a lot of people who are struggling with issues having to do with focus. So you might, you know, think of them in the attention deficit area, but just focus in general. And then they have a few clients who actually just use it as like they like to use the brain brightener protocols to kind of get them focused in the morning. And some of them use that prior to coming to do neurofeedback as well.
Mm-hmm. Guy, did you want to share something?
Yeah, so, you know, kind of generically similar to how Fran is using it, is how I'm using it as well. But I'll just, you know, the story that that is closest to my heart is my own story, and the story that I use most often with clients in the clinic to kind of tell them or share with them the value of the audiovisual entrainment and its potential is, you know, prior to us connecting with Mind Alive and starting to use the AVE in the clinic, both Fran and I thought, well, we should try it ourselves before we decide to use it in the clinic and use it with clients. And I hadn't thought about sleep as a primary reason to use it, but it turns out that that is the area for me that has been one of the biggest changes. And I've been dealing with probably a decade-long sleep issue that was, you know, sleep onset was great. I could fall asleep no problem, but I'd wake up somewhere between 3 and 5 every morning. And I didn't know it at the time, but I was kind of, it was anxiety. And, you know, I would just wake up and think, oh, I'm done. And I'd get up and I thought, well, good for me. You know, I'm getting a lot of work done because my days would start at 5 in the morning and I was very productive. And, you know, that went on, and there was all of the things that will happen from not getting enough sleep. And those things were happening to me medically. My function was decreasing, none of which I really knew until I started to use the AVE and found myself sleeping through the night and just kind of naturally waking up in the morning the way I remembered used to happen, with, you know, no alarm, not waking up anxious, just kind of naturally waking up, and just a slow ease into my day. And that in and of itself was like enough of a gift just to be able to get a good night's sleep and not wake up wired. But the benefits that came, like as I watched my, you know, my cardiac numbers improve and my hormone levels improve. And then the thing that I didn't realize was how much negative impact from sleep loss had on my business, and just me not being at the top of my game for years had really affected my business. And it was just a matter of months of having, you know, using the AVE, getting good sleep, that I started to realize how poorly I had been running my business and started to make changes. And I mean, it was a 180 for me and for the business. And it became utterly clear how my poor functioning was impacting, in my business, is because, well, as you guys know, when you're a small business owner, that takes up a good part of your life. So that transition for me, seeing it have such a simple thing, such a simple intervention having such a profound effect. I mean, that it just made me an immediate advocate for the product, and so I talked to all of my clients about it.
That's really interesting, because we just added a solution tab to our website, and it's for business performance. So that's really timely to hear you say that. Well, thanks for sharing that story. That's awesome. And it's a lot easier to talk to people about something that you yourself feel that can be of benefit, and you've seen it happen. I like the CES almost more than the AVE. I use the CES. I have over 9 years, maybe it's been 10 years. I use it almost daily. I find it really easy. I just leave it on my desk, and I put it on when I come in, and I walk around with a little lanyard and a bag around my neck, and I run it whenever I feel like I need some Zen.
Well, I mean, as you know, I mean, I think it's part of the brilliance of the device that you built in the 3 modalities. So the visual entrainment, the binaural beats, audio entrainment, and the CES, and that they can be used all together or independently as one's day allows, right? And so that's exactly something that I talk with clients about, is the CES function, that you can just have that on during the day and do 3 hours of cranial stim, right? I mean,
Yeah, so I love the AVE, but it does require that I need to take some time out and go away and use it, and it's wonderful. But like you say, the CES, it's so portable, you can use it anywhere. We have a newer staff person, and she said, the CES is my favorite new friend.
Well, and Nancy often comes in, we share an office, and I have the view hole I set on. So I'm running the Feeling Better #1 session with the view hole I set, and I'm doing my emails and
typing away
and doing my social media. I put an elastic band around to hold it up a bit better with my glasses, because I'm blind without my glasses. So I need to wear my glasses under it. And then I run the 100 hertz CES at the same time, and I love it. I think it's awesome. I always take them on holidays wherever I'm going. Do you have any other stories that you wanted to share?
Yeah, I'd love to share a story about the very first client that I used, had used an AVE. It was at the time when the guy was mentioning, where we were just kind of first bringing these into the clinic, and I was doing my own trial with sleep, using the sleep protocol. But this client came into my office, first time I'd seen her. She came in, she actually was interested in doing neurofeedback. She's this young woman who was in her mid-30s, came into my office in like a full-blown panic attack, but the kind of panic attack that I hadn't, you don't see in your office very often. And I was sitting there, and there was like going to be no assessment done, nothing. This young lady was just, I got out of her enough to know that she was in the midst of a panic attack that had been around. She had been having these for about 3 months, to the point where she had gotten agoraphobic, and it was all in response to psychotropic medication that she had been put on, and she'd had a really negative response to it. And so I was sitting there trying to, brainstorm in my head, what am I going to do for this young lady? And I thought, it's a good time to try the AVE, partly because I was like feeling a little bit helpless in the moment, because she wasn't able to do any of what I might typically do with her with psychotherapy. So asked her to hang tight, brought the unit in, talked with her about it. She was fine to try it because she was desperate. So I put one of the mood booster protocols on her, and had her lay down on the couch in the office. And she went like from about, she was about 12 on a 0 to 10 scale of panic to in 10 minutes, she had completely calmed down. I stayed in there with her to kind of keep an eye on her, and she just calmed down completely, and then stayed that way through the protocol. And when we got done, we were both just sort of a little bit speechless about it. She was just exhausted, obviously. And then we scheduled some other things. She went home, she came back and at her next session and told me that on her drive home, she and her partner interacted, and she said, I started laughing, appropriately laughing at things he was saying, and I hadn't done that for months. And it was in that moment where I was like, okay, I'm sold. This is a really good piece of technology to use. I was thinking about it as an adjunctive for neurofeedback, but it became very clear to me that this was a really nice resource to have for psychotherapy clients as well. So she continued to use that, went on to get some neurofeedback as well, and had this just amazing turnaround in her life. But it was just one of those moments where just, kind of a goosebump moment for me, certainly. And have been a fan of the AVEs ever since.
I love hearing those stories.
Yeah, it's remarkable.
Yeah.
Any other success stories?
I have a brand new neurofeedback client who just came in to start her neurofeedback training. She had contacted me a couple months ago, but it took us a couple months to get her on the schedule. And so in the meantime, she decided she was going to use an AVE. And so when she came into her first neurofeedback session, we were talking a little bit about, how things had been. And she told me that she started using the AVE, and she wanted to use it mostly. She was thinking for sleep, it would be good. And she said she decided to use some meditation protocols for that. What she told me she noticed was, so she has for years worn a mouth guard at night because she grinds her teeth pretty severely. Mm-hmm. She said her jaw tension has almost completely gone away. And she said what she'll notice is if she goes, several nights and gets lazy and doesn't, use the AVE, she'll notice the difference. And so it's also starting to train her, like it's like almost a biofeedback kind of process going on, where she's realizing much more quickly when that jaw is tense. And she's just been, she was just like this. She's like a commercial for AVE, the way she was talking about it, because it was a pretty noticeable change for her. So I hadn't actually thought about jaw tension and AVE before. And so that was really interesting to hear her talk about that. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Yeah. And it's pretty easy to use too for your clients, is it?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. It's very, it's very user-friendly. It's user-friendly not only at home, but I like it in the office as well. So, we certainly do that. Yeah.
I'll share a few stories, and we're happy to say we have plenty, which is, is a great thing to be able to say. So one of my client stories is a young lady who came in, and probably the main finding in her QEG, so in her, the finding in her EEG, was low voltage. And it was low enough that it was going to be a problem training her, because of course you kind of can't train what's not there. And so one of our strategies was to have her use the AVE for a few weeks before starting her neurofeedback, to see if we could get her voltage up and just basically do some synchrony training using the audio-visual entrainment. And it worked. When she came in after a few weeks of pretty regularly, I would say every other day for sure, and maybe more, there was enough voltage for us to be able to begin training. And then over the next several months, she continued using the AVE until we got to a point where there was enough voltage that we could actually do down trainings where necessary. Whereas before, we didn't dare do a down training because, you know, there wasn't enough voltage at all. So that's been absolutely fantastic. And she's, you know, been with me for probably about a year now, still a regular user of AVE. And you mentioned the simplicity. She's designed a little carry case so that she is able to open it up in the waiting room and maybe do 15 minutes before her neurofeedback. Or, you know, she uses public transportation. She's able to just open it up and very simply put it on and use it and then fold it up again. And, you know, it was a real, even for me, it was a teaching moment to see with just a little bit of work, how seamlessly it could be integrated into like a portable unit that can be used in multi-settings in a very non-invasive way. You know, so I have another client who, this is a person that I hadn't seen. This was done kind of, you know, at a distance intake, mailed an AVE, but it was a person with adult ADHD, and main reported problems were work performance. And this was a long lasting, you know, a decades long problem, and kind of heard about this through a friend of a friend and thought, you know, what the heck, I've got nothing to lose. Well, I mean, pretty quickly things started to turn around. Sleep got better, focus at work got better. As things at work got better, it started to get recognized around the office that this person who had kind of been, you know, siloed from the main, you know, work groups because of poor performance, all of a sudden was performing. And so he was being given more work. And as he was able to get that work done, he actually was invited to participate on a team at work, which had never happened in his tenure there. So for him, that was really exciting. And the other piece was, because he was able to get his work done at work, when he went home, he actually had time for his family. And so it changed family life, where he could re-engage, you know, play with the kids, talk with his spouse, instead of just coming home and having to do hours of work out of fear that he wasn't going to, you know, be able to, you know, maintain his job. So just that, even not living in fear that he was going to lose his job, you know, every day. So that was, you know, one of the most meaningful changes in the people I worked with, is how much impact that AVE had for him, and being able to change the symptoms of his ADHD.
Yeah, that's remarkable.
Yeah. A couple of, you know, maybe less typical uses. So one of the modalities I practice is craniosacral therapy. And one of the challenges that can arise in craniosacral therapy is if people are too kind of hyper aroused, then they can't settle into a coherent state within an hour session, right? So we might spend a whole hour just getting them to settle a little bit, but we never really get them into a therapeutic state to accomplish the goal of the therapy. And so after working with the AVEs for a while, I thought, well, how would that work if I could bring somebody into a deeper state of relaxation faster? And so sure enough, I started to use the AVE during my craniosacral therapy sessions. And that is exactly what I found. You know, in this case, it was the Paradise setting, you know, on the Delight Pro. So the state that can lead somebody into, you know, kind of suggest to the brain and nervous system, is very similar to what we call in craniosacral the mid-tide state. And so the AVE is able to help support a client to move into that state. And it allows me to do the therapeutic work of the craniosacral much more readily. And so it's been a great addition to using it, you know, clinically outside of our neurofeedback department. Yeah.
I had not heard that one before.
No, I've not heard that one, but I do hear often, like I say, clinicians or practitioners finding that using or adding AVE to their practices like helps them be more efficient, or their clients respond quicker or better. So that's, that's just one more story to add to that. It's really amazing.
Yeah. So it's a great like integration into the bodywork side of my practice.
Yeah.
And then we did a free care for essential workers program, right, related to the pandemic. So hospital, healthcare workers, grocery store workers, folks of that nature. So one of the modalities that we offered was audio-visual entrainment as a modality people could come in. And so, as you might imagine, we had the primary report was anxiety, right? And then often is, anxiety, and maybe its next relation is sleep loss. And so people were coming in, just for an AVE session, and they might be doing that once or twice a week. So even that little of an intervention was creating positive change in people's lives, and people were coming back and reporting that their sleep was getting better, their ability to, be in the stressful workplace, but to stay focused, to move through the tasks of their day, just feeling kind of more emotionally regulated, more resourced. And that was, we just had, person after person after person. We probably did a couple hundred free sessions.
Wow.
At that time. And so that story was being told over and over again. So again, a very simple, low risk, high value intervention, and seeing the value with just as simple as 1 or 2 sessions in a week.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It's heartwarming.
Mm-hmm.
Okay,
Nancy,
Fran?
I was thinking about what you said about how it makes it like integrating it into your other modalities really can make them more efficient. And I have a client who I do psychotherapy with, who came in to work on, she has a long series of really significant losses that are probably about 10 years out, in her life at this point in time, but she has really been stuck in this complex mourning spot. And so we decided we were going to do EMDR. And we started doing EMDR, and she was responding okay to it. But then we also talked at one point, I talked with her because she's talking a lot of about difficulty with her sleep. And so we talked about AVE. She decided she would try it. She now owns her own AVE because she started using it. And what I saw on the psychotherapy end was that she was so much better able to kind of go through the process of EMDR without sort of getting stuck places. And so from a clinical end, I could see that. On her subjective end, she also reported just feeling, she would talk about it like she would use the word smoother, like it would just be smoother for her as she was going through the process. And so that was just really wonderful to see. And we've continued to do work with both of those, and just had really pretty life-changing results for her. She could not talk about her mother without just breaking into tears, and it was causing problems for her. She didn't want to get together with friends socially because it just was always there, and it was far enough out where she was feeling like, this was becoming a problem. Isn't the case anymore. She can talk about it, she can feel the loss, and she her whole system is responding to it very differently. And so that was really neat. And then kind of a nice little side effect she found with it is that it helped with her restless leg also, which was one of those surprise things again, which I kind of really enjoy about AVE. Yeah. So I had a client come in to do work. He was having really severe OCD. He was a man. He was 60 when I started working with him, and he had some history of some previous episodes of OCD. But he had been really good for quite some time. But when he came in to see me, he was in a flare, had gotten to the point where he could not go to work at all. He ran his own business. And so if he's not at work, then there's trouble, for him. and his OCD was extremely severe. So he would like, it manifested in different ways, lots of contamination things, worries about radon, but also one of the most heart-wrenching things he would share with me on a regular basis was, you know, he would have difficulty when he was driving, where, you know, he would start to have an obsessive thought that he had done something, like if he switched a lane, that he had maybe caused an accident or something and created harm for somebody. And he would spend oftentimes 2 hours just circling around and around in that same area just to make sure that he, you know, hadn't hurt anybody. He would listen to the police radio, you know, to see if there was any report of accident, all of that. And he was literally tortured by it because he knew that there wasn't, that he really hadn't done anything, but he literally could not get out of it. So he would oftentimes in the beginning of our therapy just be sitting he'd come into my office and he'd just crouch down, and he was just in agonizing anxiety from the OCD. And so we started using the AVE, the plan of starting to do some neurofeedback as well. And he had a really positive reaction to the AVE quite quickly, much like the young woman I talked about earlier, where his anxiety level in the session just, you know, went down to, you know, to a place where he could sit and look at me and talk to me and not have the agony that he had been in when he started. And he's just a wonderful success story. You know, we continued to have him use the AVE, and he started neurofeedback and got to a place where the obsessions are gone. He doesn't worry about the radon anymore. He's not driving his wife. It was really causing a lot of trouble in his relationship because, like, you couldn't just rinse a chicken. You know, it had to, you know, it just was painstaking. And so all of that has improved. He's back, he's working, he's productive at work, and just doesn't feel that any of that anxiety that he was having. As a psychotherapist, working with somebody with OCD and seeing that kind of change occur is rare. Is really, really rare. Now, he did work. We did a lot of like the kind of the typical ERP where he was constantly reassurance seeking. And so we had to work on that and making sure that neither I nor his wife was doing any of that, or he had another practitioner he was working with doing acupuncture at Bhakti, and had to let her know, you know, not to reassure him because that's not good. But it was one of those clinical cases that just continues to leave me in awe, because I work with people, a lot of people that have OCD that aren't willing for many reasons, and sometimes it's OCD reasons that cause them to not be willing to use the units. And it was just an incredible life-changing process for him. Yeah.
It's exciting to hear.
Yeah.
Well, and one of the really wonderful things about Mariana, you know, coming up with this idea, doing this little series to just talk to some of our clinicians who are using our products, just to get some ideas out there about, you know, how people can use them in their practices. One of the amazing things for me is to hear these stories. Like, you know, like I know that it works. I know it's been out there for all these years, but it's just so wonderful to hear the kinds of things that people are doing with our devices out there and making such changes in people's lives, you know, especially something that is relatively simple and inexpensive too. So it's pretty cool.
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah.
Any other stories, or you think you're good?
Marianne loves this stuff.
I do. I eat it up. I just love hearing these stories. People tell us at Mind Alive these stories. So that's why I wanted to have other people hear what good things are happening.
Yeah.
Well, maybe one other one.
Okay,
sure.
Just another one of those stories that just makes me happy. It just makes me happy to to envision it. So this was a client that was referred to me for neurofeedback from traumatic brain injury. And we talked about AVE, and she decided to give it a try. Took it home, used it, thought, wow, this is really having an effect. So she called me and said, well, I have 3 special needs children, and kind of talked me through each one of them. And do you think it would be appropriate? And I said, well, it seems perfectly appropriate for what's going on. Again, low risk, high reward. But, with children, it can be tricky to get them to engage the device. And so we talked through that, some of the strategies for getting children to use the device, like her modeling the use of it and letting the kids get interested and curious, like, what are you doing, Mom? That kind of approach. So, but what she found was just her kids were just naturally interested in trying it. And what she couldn't believe was, 1, they took to it, and 2, it had a positive impact on each one of them, each with their own disability, but found that the AVE had a quality of regulating. So she actually ended up buying 4 because she could never get time with 1 because they were always fighting over who got to use it. So now everybody in the family has their own AVE, and she said, like, the house has never been so peaceful, with everybody in the house being well regulated. Relationships are better. There's fewer tantrums. The children are easier to work with. She homeschools, so that's going better. So I just have this vision of Mom and 3 kids all laid out with their AVEs on doing their sessions.
No kidding.
Yeah, it's just such a beautiful story, and to see the impact on her life of not having 3 still challenging, right? 3 kids will always be challenging, but not having the extra challenge coming from the dysregulation, right? Being able to set that aside absolutely has made her a happier mom.
That is a good story.
That is good.
I was just thinking of, oops, I'm sorry.
I was going to say, and Dave often says that the whole family should use a device. So if you have a device, that everybody would benefit from using it. Go ahead, Fran.
Yeah. I love the idea of each one having their own. I have a little visual line. I'm enjoying that. I was just thinking about how when I talk with clients, particularly my psychotherapy clients, with neurofeedback, you can talk about it like in the context of all of that, right? But with psychotherapy, talking with my clients about a device like this, because a lot of people look at it and they're like, what? They're a little like, what is this thing? And it goes back to what Guy was talking about with the first story he shared, which was his own story, that mine also, like, that helps me to talk with clients about it. And it somehow seems to legitimize it for clients. When I used it for sleep, I had no idea, like, I was using it much for the same reason Guy was, that I would wake up. I don't know that if it was anxiety, I always called it like, this is mom sleep, right? At some point in the night, you're going to wake up, right? But for years. And so I never really felt rested. And I remember that I think it was the 3rd night that I used the AVE. I put it on at night. I woke up in the morning and I had literally no idea what had happened between the time I woke up and the time I put the headset on. I fell asleep. And I remember telling you that, Guy, and Guy said, well, you mean you slept? And it was like this, it was an aha moment for me. It was like, oh my God, that is what sleep is, And so I share that story with clients as a way of kind of helping them appreciate that sometimes, like, we don't realize, we don't know what we don't know about how dysregulated we are until something regulates us and we're like, oh, holy cow, I was, But that story is just, I think oftentimes that personal story is a nice way to kind of segue clients into talking about something that might be a little bit out of the norm for psychotherapy, certainly.
Mm-hmm, mm-hmm.
Well, I've kept you talking for quite a while, so I really appreciate all of those stories. They're all so good to hear, and I'm really glad you were willing to share them with us.
Yeah, really grateful for you to be here with us and share those stories. It's really wonderful to hear.